to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. I will share my screen. 1 second. And Brian, can you confirm that the slide deck is full?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Willem Tromp. I'm living in the Netherlands. I'm co-owner and researcher at Epicflow, which is a multi-project management enterprise solution. And beside that, I'm also a PhD candidate on multi-project management at the Open University in the Netherlands. And I have a family, a wife and one son. Son is studying computer science and artificial intelligence. And that's great because I'm also working on artificial intelligence now, so we can do it both. Very funny to do this with your child. The title of today is, and the subject is Protect Employees in a Multi-Project Organization Against Overload. And everybody will flourish, including your organization. So I will bring you through what I experienced in the last 15 years, and I would like to share my knowledge on this. So if you are an academic researcher, then you always have to start with academic statements from colleagues. And those two I'm mentioning here really struck my mind, and the citations is coming from here. And let me start with the first one. In a typical multi-project environment, the same people work simultaneously in several projects, and the complexity of resource allocation is the main challenge. And look at the year. It was already mentioned in 2003 at Stockholm University. And this article really struck my mind because they pinpointed on a problem I was also challenged with. And especially the resource allocation. That's the main challenge. I can really advise you to read this article. The second one was in 2006, also the Stockholm University. And they said, in a multi-project environment, the risk of project overload is huge and its devastating effects are dramatic. Now, if you read this article, you start crying because they really did research on what are the devastating effects. Now, that's really dramatic because people get ill, productivity goes down, and a lot of things are happening, increased stress, decreasing motivation, etc. So those were, let's say, the two articles that was my starting point in working on multi-project environments. Now, what is a multi-project environment? Basically, it's very simple. You have your portfolio management or your order portfolio from your customers. You have your individual projects, and the project manager with his team creates a project plan, and then they have to find the resources, and then they figured out that some of the resources have to work at several projects at the same time, let's say it in the same week. Now, Harvard Business Review had an article, this one over here in 2017, and they came up with the following. In this situation, in a multi-project environment, the opportunities are, you can improve labor efficiency. So the difference is with dedicated teams, then you also always have people that don't have enough work. But in a multi-project environment, people work in several projects, you can increase your labor efficiency. And what's really great is the opportunity for knowledge sharing. So those are the opportunities. But if you look at the unintended consequences, we see always competing priorities between the projects, fighting for the same resources. And this can make it hard for teams with overlapping memberships to stay on track. We see group cohesion often suffers. People do not know in which team they belong. And it can create stress, fatigue, and burnout. So those are, let's say, the unintended consequences. Great article. Now, let's have a look. I don't have to tell you the project management body of knowledge. So what we see here is that on budget, on target, and on time, this is typically the project management body of knowledge. But if we look at the results from the last 5 years, we say that only, according to this research, 30% is successful, 50% is challenged and 20% is failing. And of the challenge ones, we see exceeding budgets, overdue, and delivering scope. Now, I don't have to mention these numbers. You are all aware of it. So let's have a look. What is the issue and what problem are we addressing? Now, probably all of you are familiar with the Gantt chart. And if you look at the Gantt chart, a technique that is used quite often is that inherently it's a single project design, because you look at from isolation for your project and you plan to every step with a start and stop date, and every task adds value towards the delivery. But there's one big but. And the but is it's too deterministic for a highly variable multi-project environment. What do I mean? If you plan start and stop dates of every activity, that's very deterministic, because I think you can't, especially not in a multi-project environment, because on the moment this project can start, this task can start, you don't even know if the resources is available, because he can still be stuck in some other project. So this deterministic way of planning does not fit in a multi-project environment anymore. And if I look to the market, I see this multi-project environment, I see it popping up everywhere. Almost every companies are suffering for it. So what we did with our company research, and we asked our customers, can you give us the reasons for poor performance in your multi-project environment? And this is the list the people came up. They said, yeah, quite often we have unrealistic planning. And the second one is, yeah, the customers are always changing requirements. And number 3, lacking resources. Although they were promised, on the moments I need them, they are stuck in other projects. Uncertainty is always there, Murphy's law. Number 5, interesting. On the moment people get overloaded, they lose focus. And that's quite interesting, because this can be devastating for quality and also for speed. Number 6, this is especially in engineering environments, we see a lot of underestimation. And number 7, really interesting, on the moment people have too much work, they start multitasking. So meaning they start with the task of project A, do not finish it, jump over to project B, start the second task, do not finish it, and then they have to go back to project A to finish the first task. Now, this type of multitasking is devastating for your productivity. So this was an interesting list. Now let's go into the solution that is created by project management systems. And we call it the Gantt of Gantt charts. What they are doing is that they use all the Gantt charts from all the projects, and they create one big Gantt chart to do resource management. So they try to level out, and in such a way that you know which resource has to work for project R on which day, and on what day on project B. But Albert Einstein already said it's unlikely that the solution is rooted in the same thinking that created the problem. So the Gantt chart, basically, the deterministic way of thinking, is basically the problem. So the Gantt of Gantt charts can never be the solution, because that is rooted in the problem. So this is a problem we have to face. Now let's have a look at the direction of the solution. And this is the direction of the solution we developed, and we call it the Epicflow body of knowledge. Now, be aware, we are not changing the project management body of knowledge. That's there, that's good, and keep it. So you see the PM box, you see it over here, the different projects that are still controlled and to deliver on time, budget, and scope. But we do something extra, an extra layer over all projects, because you are in a multi-project environment. And what is step number 1? You have to protect your people against overload. And why? Because on the moment people get overloaded, they get stress, they are going to multitask, so the productivity will go down very fast. They get demotivated, and maybe they get ill even. So that's one thing. But the second thing is, on the moment people are overloaded, the projects they are working for are going into delay. So you have to protect people against overload. That's step number 1. Remember the first article I mentioned. Sorry, it was the second article. In order to do this, in order to protect your people against overload, you need to know your output. So you need to know how much work can my people handle in an optimal way. Because if it is an optimal way, the productivity is at the highest, by the way, and the people will really enjoy it. So you need to know your output. And number 3 is priority on tasks, because if people have to work in more than one project, you have to tell them what is the priority. Are you going to work for a task in project A, or are you going to work for a task in project B? You have to tell them. Don't ask project managers, because then you know the answer. A project manager will tell you have to work for me. But don't forget, they are working in a multi-project environment and they have to work for several project managers. Okay, this is the Epicflow body of knowledge. Let's dive in those 3 pillars. I will come with an example from a customer. This was one of my first customers. And let's have a look at the consequence of overload. They had a skill team of 5 engineers with all the same skills. And then I asked them, please, you are with 5. What do you think is your productivity on all the projects you are working on? And they told me, it's about 80% of the time we are available. So 80% of 5 people is a capacity of 4. Now, thank you, I said. Now give me all your project plans. So they came with their Gantt charts. We put it in our system and we calculated the average workload. And the average workload was 11, almost triple the capacity. And now the question to you is, what do you think was the output? Was the output equal to 4? Was it higher than 4? Or was it less? Just think about it. You don't have to answer it. But I can tell you the output at this example was only 2. And look, just bear in mind, the people were heavily overloaded. And when you are heavily overloaded, normally your productivity goes down. But this situation was really bad. So the 5 people only delivered because almost the amount of 2 people. It was amazing. Then I said to the R&D manager, I said, guy, this is your situation. By the way, it feels like this. This is your situation. And the R&D manager said, okay, I made a mistake. I will reduce the workload. He could do this because he was only delivering projects for his marketing department. So he just said to marketing, please tell me which of the projects I can put in the refrigerator and which do I have to focus on, as he did. And then I went to this team and something interesting happened. I told them, hey guys, you told me that you thought your productivity was 80%. But you see at the numbers that the output is just 40%, corresponding with the 2. And then they start talking, yeah, we have a lot of disturbance. People are calling us all the time. I have to respond to emails. And sometimes I have to work on a project I already finished 5 years ago. All these kind of disturbances. And don't forget, project managers are coming to our desk and asking, when are you going for my project? Because you were promised. Yeah, but I'm still stuck in another project. So this was really a bad situation. And then we did a very interesting experiment. I said to the guys, let's do the following, just for a few weeks, let's do the following. On the moment, on the moment you come in at the office, you switch off your cell phone and do not open your email box. Start working on a task. Don't forget that those are engineers. Start working on a task and do this focus for 3 hours. Then after 3 hours, around 11 o'clock, you open your cell phone, you open your email box, do your normal work, you go to lunch, and 1 o'clock you do the same. Switch off email and switch off your cell phone. Do that for 3 hours, and at the end of the day, you open your phone and email again. I'm talking about engineers. I'm not talking about project managers and resource managers. They have to, let's say, they have to look at their emails the whole day and their phone should be active. No, I'm talking about engineers. And the result was fascinating. Within 3 weeks, they doubled their output. So somehow the way they are organized and the way they behaved led to an output of 2. But after this experiment, in 2-3 weeks, the output was almost doubled. So this was a fascinating experiment. And this raised a question for me. Is the causality between workload and output, is that generic? So if the workload is too high, the output drops down. And if the workload goes down, the output goes up. Now, this was, for me, a very interesting academic question. And then I said to my business partner, we need to create software that is monitoring this. And this is one of the first pillars of our Epicflow body of knowledge. Now, let me explain. I call it the historical load graph, and it's monitoring workload versus output. Now, let me explain the graph. At level 40, you see a black line, and this is corresponding to the capacity, the available capacity over time. Of course, this can change a little bit, and during holidays, this goes down. The red line is corresponding to the workload. And in the beginning, the workload started at 45, and then it drops down, and then it goes up. So you see, this is changing also all the time. And now comes the interesting part, which is the output. And the output here started at 20. Now, I have to explain you what I mean by output, but I have a very simple example. Suppose you are working in my organization, and I give you 4 tasks. You estimate all 4 tasks 10 hours. So let's say next week you are going to work on those 4 tasks. So I give you 4 tasks of 10 hours is 40 hours of work. At the end of the week, on Friday, you have just finished 1 task. Meaning your output is what you really delivered. Your output is just 1 task, is 10 hours. So output is always measured regarding the original estimation. And we regard output only when you really deliver. Because if you deliver a half a task, you haven't delivered anything. That's basically the theoretical idea. And in this situation, this company was just delivering 20 with people 40. So it was just an efficiency of 50%. Let's say this. Then this manager asked me, Willem, I have a workload of 45. Should I add more capacity? And I said, no. In this situation, the difference between capacity and output is so big. Let's do an experiment. Reduce your workload by stopping 1 or 2 of your projects. As he did, he reduced the workload. And then after some time, we see that the output goes up. The 2 are coming together, the red and the blue line, almost together here. And then we made a mistake. We increased the workload by putting a project in, and then the output drops. So it is as if when the workload goes up, output goes down, and when the workload goes down, output goes up. As we see here, we reduce the workload again, and now the 2 are coming together. And now it's interesting is the following. The level of the output, which is about 34, is basically your actual capacity and not the black line. The black line is an assumed capacity. You think this is your capacity, but it isn't. In reality, it's the blue line that is your actual capacity. That is what those guys in this team, in this case support, can really deliver. Those are numbers that are facts. So what we learned is you have to find your actual capacity. And this is why we monitor workload versus output. Now, be aware of the following. We are not interested in a personal output. We are interested in the output of the whole group. Because do not measure personal output. That's dangerous because then people can start changing their behavior. But what is important to know, what is the output of every group? Mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, all the software engineers, you want to know that. And if you know that, this is valuable information. So this is the historical load, monitoring workload versus output. The next one is the future load graph because you want to protect against overload. And here we did something funny. we see a zero level here, and the zero level is your maximum load. Meaning, if your load graph goes above zero, you are overloaded. How much? 4. So you are lacking 4 people. For how long? This period of time. If your load graph goes below zero, you are underloaded. How much? -4. So 4 people are idle. For how long? For this period of time. And the zero level is always adapted with holidays, when people are on leave or have a training. So zero level is always your maximum capacity. And that's great, because in one view, you see if you have a bottleneck, yes or no. You also see if you have, let's say, a long period of idleness, so you need more work. So this view is really fantastic. And make sure that if you see in the future an overload situation, fix it. Fix it before it hits you. So what we are trying to do is look in the future and try to find out, do I have a bottleneck in the future? If you don't do anything, at that moment, you are here in this timeline, this overload situation will hit your projects where those people are working on. So the delays will come. You can predict the delays almost. And it's interesting, because if you look at project progress, you're looking backwards. What happened? We do it differently. We look in the future, what can happen. And the overload situation, I can already predict what will happen. And we are using even artificial intelligence, or let's say predictive analytics, to use this future information and to make predictions what can happen, which projects will suffer from this overload situation. That's very interesting. And project managers really love it, because it gives them more information to make good decisions together with the resource managers, of course. Very important. Okay. So, what is the information you need to do these calculations? And basically, that's very simple. The only thing you need is that you need to have, let's say, a network of tasks and their dependencies, as I give you this example over here. Task 1, here we have task 2. Task 2 can only start if task 1 is finished. And I have here parallel tasks, they integrate over here, and here I have a milestone and with a deadline. I do not need the start and end date of every task. Do you remember? This deterministic way of thinking, which is coming from the Gantt chart, does not work, cannot work. So I totally ignore start and end date of all those activities. But what is important, that I know the delivery date. So you can also do this in an agile environment, no problem. Okay, for every task, I need to know at least the following. What is the resource group, the skill group that has to perform this task? Can I have more than one in one task? Yes, of course. So I need to know what skill groups are needed in every task. And I need to know what is the effort you think, the estimation you think, how much work is in one task. Not the duration. Everybody's used to plan duration. Forget it. I need to know the effort. That's the only thing I know. And with that, I can calculate, do we have a feasible planning to deliver on time, to deliver regarding this milestone? So that's all we need. And I think all organizations have this information. You should know the dependencies between tasks. You should know which skill is needed, and you should know what is the estimation. Although I know you can make mistakes because estimations are really complicated, don't worry. By monitoring it, we will find out what is the delta between estimations and reality. I think you have this information. Now, one thing I didn't discuss yet, which is right priorities. And I have an example over here. I have a situation here with project 1, 2, and 3. And I have here 1, 2, 3, 4 resources with different skills. Project 1 has 4 tasks. A, B, C, and D. 100, 600 is the estimation, 100, 100. Then I have really a lot of float, and I have to deliver after 1600 hours. Project 2 has 3 small tasks, a little bit of float, and has to be delivered after 600 hours. And project 3, also 3 tasks, a little bit bigger, has to be delivered after 1700 hours. Now, my question to you is the following. If you are resource A, this is resource A, and you have 3 tasks on your desk, in what sequence would you perform those 3 tasks? Now, just think about it and choose one of these answers, A, B, C, D. Are you starting with project 1? Are you starting with project 3? Or are you starting with project 2? And if you start with project 2, what was the second one? So just think about it. Use your intuition. By the way, I also did this at an academic conference in Technical University Delft. It was a PMI conference, world conference. And I had 8 professors in project management in my room. That was the time that we could do it physically. So I could grab the guys and said, please come to my presentation. They also did choose this example. I will tell them what was their result. Now, have you picked your results? Yes, you know how to do it as resource A. Let's have a look at the effect. Lady C is telling us, let's start with the closest due date. A lot of people are doing this. Focus on the project that has to be delivered first. Another reason is this has the least float. The float is very short. So let's see what is the effect if you start with project 2 and then project 1 and then 3. Just have a look. In that case, project 3 will be way too late. It will be delivered after 90 to 100 hours. By the way, the assumption is that they work according to the estimations. So the estimations are 100% correct. But you see the problem, resource B is the bottleneck. And that's why project 3 is delivered too late. Now, resource D is really in a bad situation. On the moment he starts, he already knows impossible for me to deliver on time. Now, let's still start with project 2 and then switch 1 and 3 and just have a look at the results. A much better result. Just by switching the sequence of 1 and 3, but still too late. Now, let's start with project 1. Still not good. A little bit better than the first one, but now still too late, project 3. Let's still start with project 1 and switch 2 and 3. Have a look at the result. The only result is that you create a little bit of float in project 2. Now let's start with project 3. Amazing. All projects are delivered on time. So the only thing I want to show you is that the sequence of performing those 3 tasks by resource, this resource, has a huge consequence or can have a huge consequence on the delivery performance of all projects. So in this situation, we gain 20%. It's amazing. That's 200, 300 hours earlier. I can tell you, all professors in project management choose to start with project 2. All had the wrong answer. They start laughing. They said they really fall into the trap. The trap is focusing on the project that has to be delivered first, or focusing on the project that has the least float. Now, this looks very easy, but don't forget this. If you have 3 tasks on your desk, you have 6 different sequencing possibilities. If you have 4 tasks on your desk, you already have 24. Now, my question to you is, do you have 10 tasks on your desk, or do you have colleagues which have 10 tasks on their desk, which they can start with? Be aware you have 3.6 million sequencing possibilities. Basically, this means a human being is not able to prioritize between tasks that are part of several networks of projects. No way a human being is able to do. The funny thing is that you as a manager are quite often asked by your, let's say, team leads, I finished my job, what should be my next one? You have to prioritize all day, not only your own tasks, but as a manager, also the tasks from your people. Impossible. You need an algorithm for priorities and feasibility or milestone completion. So this is what we created, this algorithm. And the professors start laughing. They said, this is the most simple proof that the people cannot do. They were really fascinated by that. Good. So now I discussed the historical load graph to find out, to monitor the relation, causality between workload and output. We discussed the future load graph to protect against overload. And we discussed that we have an algorithm for the priority, especially for people that work in more than one project. Now, let's go back to the Epicflow body of knowledge. So protect against overload, I already told, future load graph, know your output, historical load graph, and priority on tasks, which the example. Now, important, know your output we do on group level, future load graph you do on all levels, company level, department level, group level, and even on individual level, because it can happen that one guy in your group is overloaded, although the group is not overloaded. So you have to monitor that also. Now, my question to you is, just look at your organization. Let's assume you are able to protect your people against overload. Although you have a lot of work, you can do it because you know your outputs and you organize all your project plans in such a way with good milestones, nobody's overloaded. And you have a priority system mechanism and everybody is obeying this priority mechanism. What do you think will happen with the productivity in your company? You don't have to tell me, you just pick a number. How much percentage of productivity can go up? I will give you the numbers of our research afterwards. So pick a number, 1%, 10%, 30%, 50, 100, etc. Now let's go to the numbers. Ryan, for you, I need 2 minutes, so I will stick to the 35 minutes. Good. Research on the causality between workload and output. Do you remember this one was one of my questions? After 40 implementations in real situations, the generic rules we found are, if the resource is overloaded, the output drops after a short period of time, not at the beginning. People start working harder, doing overtime, output will drop after 2 or 3 weeks. If the overload situation disappears, it takes time before the output will go up. People need recovery time. Be aware of that. And here comes the results. The magnitude is between 30 and 200% output increase. And this was really surprising for me. I was not aware that the lowest number is 30% plus. Now, be aware, I'm talking about organizations which has an engineering environment. We only tested this in engineering organizations. So electrical engineering, mechanical, software engineering, that kind of environments. Not in production. Production is totally different. But in engineering environments, you can have these numbers. If you have projects which are change projects, that's a totally different ballgame. Then it doesn't fit. But in engineering environments, these are the results. It's fascinating. 200%, meaning this company delivered 25 projects every year. And after some time, they delivered 75 projects with the same amount of people. Now those are fascinating numbers. By the way, this was the 200% was from the company I had the example in the beginning. Now let's have some learnings based on our research, and then this will be the last slide. Overloading resources is double stupid. It kills productivity and delays projects. It's funny, eh? Double stupid is not an academic language, but I'm still using it. By the way, the professors liked it. For me, this is really fascinating because it really kills productivity. People suffer from it. And because of that, all the projects they have to work in also suffer from it. So get rid of this and everybody will flourish. The people will like it, the project managers are happy, and the company is happy because they are doing a good business. So I'm still wondering, why do we overload people? Next one, a human being is not able to prioritize between tasks that are part of several networks or projects. So if somebody is telling you, yes, I'm able to prioritize, impossible. Explain it to him. Use my example. Number 3, this is also interesting. When you have one bottleneck, when you have more than one bottleneck, when you have more than one bottleneck, you have ignored the real one. What do I mean by that? Just an example. Just imagine that engineering is your bottleneck. and they have a lot of delays. Because of that, the drawings are too late. So the purchasing department can purchase the parts later. So the parts will be delivered today too late. And then the production department that had originally planned 4 weeks to work on this machine, they now get only 2 weeks. And now suddenly production is a bottleneck. No, production is not a bottleneck. It's a created bottleneck by the real bottleneck, which was engineering. So if you have more than one bottleneck, look upstream in your projects. There is the real one. That's the one who is causing the bottlenecks downstream. Now, last one. Planned work is not a problem. It's the unplanned work that creates overload and delays. So I see a lot of planning which fit. It does not create overload. But during the execution of the projects, we see that the unplanned work creates the overload and delays. So you have to figure out what is the percentage you think of overload in all your groups, of unplanned work in all your groups. This is really a tough challenge to find out. I asked this to my customers, and the majority say that the amount of unplanned work is between 30 and 50% in engineering departments, which is huge. So you really have to find a solution for that. Good. Brian, I'm at the end, so you can take over.
Excellent.
Can I stop sharing my screen? What do you want, Brian?
Yeah, if you stop sharing. Well, no, you can leave that there so people can jot down those notes if you want. The questions are buzzing. We have quite a lot of them. I'm going to start with, it wasn't the first question, but it resonates with me as well. Quite a few of your examples were from engineering.
Yeah.
So the question from Koen was, how do you measure and count the output from the department? And again, I say it resonates with me. We work on projects that can take several months. And if you just judged it based on a deployment, that can take a period of time. So how do you continually measure those outputs?
Yeah, basically, if you have a project and you have a baseline of 1,000 hours work, you have spent 1,500 hours, then spent is 1,500. Those are the costs, but the output is just 1,000.
Okay, so is it hours? You measure it in hours, not necessarily deliverables.
Hours.
Okay.
I know, because in deliverables, you can also have purchasing parts, contracts, tractors, and that kind of stuff. If I talk about output, I talk about my own people. And that's the estimation, your baseline effort estimation. That's output. Yes?
Yep, good for me. That makes sense. Koen, if that doesn't answer your question, again, type in the chat or give me a shout. We can unmute you. Neven was very active. He recognizes the problem. He remembers the project from 2005. He could see when resources were still free and booked the time slots, but he had a lot more resources, which allowed some slack. So he wanted to know about the resource reservation and how that works. What's your thought on that approach?
Yeah, in my experience, when we developed this, I was a little bit worried what is the experience and the behavior of, let's say, the engineers when this is happening. The funny thing is you give them a priority list and we say, please obey the priority list. It's not rock science, you can change, but at least it's an advice. And they loved it. And why? Because if you work in more than one project, you have to serve several project managers. There's always a fight if the company is overloaded. And the engineers could tell, no, we agreed that I have to obey the priority list. I'm working at priority 1, so don't disturb me. And I will finish it as soon as possible. Then I will step over to priority number 2. That's your project. And then I will help your project. So engineers loved it. Because most times engineers are a little bit introvert and they love to focus on their work. That's key. Focus on their work is the key. I can tell you that. That is creating this huge amount of increase in productivity.
And so it doesn't just reduce the workload. I can imagine that reduces quite a bit of stress as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that ties into, Lieven made a second point as well, not picking up the phone, not reading email is, that again, as you say, they can focus on that project.
Yeah.
That's one of the key principles of agile work, pull work instead of pushing. Is that the real reason for the productivity increase?
Now, look, Agile, my own company is using the Scrum methodology within our system. In Agile, you have the same problems. If you overload people in a Scrum period, you see the same effects. And basically, it's an Agile approach because we say to the people, okay, this is what you have to do. You only have to look at your priority list. Forget the whole list, because that's including all the backlog. But look at the top and look at your load graph. And if your load graph is still fine, you are okay. You're really beneficial. You are really delivering value to all the projects. And just work from top to bottom. That's basically the simple idea. And you can say, is this Agile? Yes or no? I don't care. But you can use the same approach in an Agile environment like Scrum, like Kanban.
So it's a combination, the principles applying to Agile and the others as well.
Yeah.
I think there's more questions. We have one from Jan. In resource management, I work with FTE, full-time equivalent. I'm familiar with that as well. The time they have available is then calculated based on productive utilization targets. Seems similar to the kind of workload that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what we do is, let's assume the guy is available 40 hours a week. Let's assume we hope that he will be productive for 80%. Then the capacity is regarding the 80%, which is 32 hours. We assume he will be working productively for 32 hours during a week. So we measure his output regarding the 32 hours. Yeah, and you can decide what is the percentage, of course. And if in case you have a junior, you just reduce this percentage. You say, I'm already glad if he has a productivity of 40%.
Yeah.
And that is a very easy calculation.
And I suppose that gives you good feedback as well, because one of the reasons for failure you mentioned at the beginning was poor planning or poor estimations.
Absolutely.
So if they've done 32 hours and you expected it to be delivered in 32 hours, it isn't. That's when you have to refine your estimates there.
And the funny thing is, we have this historical load graph, and I'm really proud of it because I'm the inventor of it. This historical load graph is giving you feedback on the output of a group. Now, let's assume the output goes down. Just ask the guys and put them in a room. Guys, this is what we see. And then they will explain you what happened. Bad estimations, there were a lot of disturbance, all these kind of things they will tell you. So the historical load graph, the feedback is very, very powerful. And you know what is the delta between spent hours and estimations, the output. And this gives you, by the way, the funny thing is that you see in the historical load graph, on the moment the workload goes up, output goes down.
Yeah.
So it's also good information, not only for the team members, but also for the management team.
Yeah.
So I can talk about this for hours.
We have a few more minutes, so let's have a few more questions. I suppose again, what's critical here as well is time tracking of the project team members as well.
Yeah.
Is it usual to get frustrations or issues with that? Is everybody happy to track all of the time?
Yeah, this is an excellent one. I give you an example of a client. I will not mention his name because he will not be pleased. There's an organization we are working with, and they had the guys had to book their hours every week. So on Friday evening, what did I do, and what's the booking code, and you know it. So booking the hours for cost purposes, but also this information is going back to the project and tell the project manager what is his progress. Now this was a nightmare because booking codes are not the same as tasks, because you can have the same booking code for several tasks. So the project manager has to figure out what is the physical progress on this task and on that task. And he had to call the guys. It's amazing. And they make huge machines. They're lovely products. So to get the progress of your projects can take 4 to 6 weeks. Can you just imagine that the progress of your project is all based on data which is already 4 to 6 weeks old? Guys, this is not my century. This is the past century. Now, what we do in our case is we ask, please guys, if you work on a task, let's say you only work on one task, the task is about 20 hours estimation. At the end of the day, please tell me your progress. Did you spend 8 hours? Okay. Does this mean that we have 12 hours left for the remaining part? If not, please change the remaining part. So we ask the people to give back the numbers they think, because the one who's working on the job is the best one who can, let's say, estimate the remaining work. Now, this means if you do one task a day, one registration, which costs you not even a second, because it's just very simple. Fill in the number 8. Okay, you worked 8 hours. Were you productive 8? Then adapt the remaining hours. Can also mean that you need less. Now, if you do this, and we have a real-time system, the progress of your project is actual. It's amazing. For the project manager, the portfolio manager, the program manager, you have an actual situation. This is the current century, guys, not the old one.
But again, that goes back to if they're focused on one or few tasks without interruptions, without overload, without multitasking, it's easier to measure, easier to track and get the results. But I think
correct. But
the biggest challenge is you ask somebody, what did I do for the last hour? Well, it was a bit of this and a bit of that. And, you know, how do I log that in my system as well?
Yeah. I know you have guys who have to do a lot of multitasking during the day, especially project managers and resource managers. I can imagine that. But bear in mind, an engineer should focus on his work. And maybe one of the engineers is what we call the, how do you call it? The fireman. One of the engineers has to do this. So focus all this unplanned things on one spot and leave the rest. Leave the rest alone. That's the idea. And maybe you need 2 of those guys. This is organization, by the way.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be the same one every time. You can switch the guys.
Yeah.
1 week you are the one
for
support, and then the other week the other one. Yeah.
We had a question from Saskia. I don't know if we've just answered that. Saskia can let us know. To what level of detail do you need to plan activities for the algorithm to work?
Good question. I see project plans which only plan a work package of 1,500 hours. That's not the right detail for doing this. What we advise always, go to the detail where a task is between 8 and 40 hours, maybe 80 hours. And why? Because let's assume I have a task of 200 hours. You start working with it. After 1 week, the only thing you know, I've worked 40 hours on it. After the second week, you know, I've worked 40 hours on it. Yeah. In the last week, you find out what is the remaining time. At the end of the task, you know how much time you need. So if you have a task of 200 hours, it takes 5 weeks before you as a project manager know when will this be delivered. So if you have shorter tasks of 40 hours, then you already know it within a week. You have better control, and it's also better for the engineer, because he can, then he already knows after 1 or 2 days, he knows, I will make it on time, I will be finishing it earlier, or I need more time, I need help. So that's why we say between 8 hours and 40, and if it is 80, okay, no problem.
Okay, I'm sure Saskia will let us know if that answered her question. Now I feel like an auctioneer at an online virtual sale, because I have a question from iPhone.
Interesting.
And it's a good one as well. I don't think we're going to catch them all, but this is a good one. How to manage this theory in an agile safe context with senior management influencing to work more on their priority. Because that's the key, right? We talk about overload, and we talk about stress, and your 3 projects, A, B, C, which order? There's logic, and then there's emotion, and then there's senior managers.
Yeah. Do you remember the list of poor performance I gave to you? It's 7 points. It had an 8 one, and they call it bad management. One of the reasons of poor performance is bad management, meaning if senior management is pushing for an extra project, so put this into the pipeline, all projects will suffer. And I have seen this. And now it comes. I'm 61 years old. I don't care about the customer. I want to protect the employees, not senior management. So I will fight them. And I will, by the way, in the Netherlands, you just can say to a C-level guy, you're an idiot. And I can prove it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can do this in the UK, Brian. But so, no, putting in too many projects, and I know how it goes. I know senior people. I'm one of myself. I also have the sometimes want to, we need to do this the coming week. This is really bad. And the figures, the historical load graph, will show you the effect of bad decisions. That's the fun. And now senior management plays a trick. They don't put this project in the system. It's just underneath the desk. Then you also see the result, because there is no productivity anymore on some people.
Yeah.
Because they are working on something which is not existing.
Yeah.
Don't try to tell me the tricks they can play. I can do the same. Yeah. But they will. They will. Yeah. I tell you, they will, and we will show it.
It's definitely a message I'm taking back to my workplace, because again, it's classic overload, but the impact on productivity, I think the perception is that the more we give people, what's that old adage? Give something to a busy person and it will get done. So yeah. They think there's capacity and multitasking and stretching and stretch assignments, but actually it's having the opposite effect.
It's the opposite. And because I'm doing my PhD research, I read a lot of academic articles. They all tell the same story. Don't do it. You ruin your people. You ruin productivity. It's bad for the company. And still they are doing it. It's really amazing.
Yeah. Okay, we're short of time. I think we could have had another hour. One last question from Ramesh. At the time of planning, we do not have a view on skill levels of resources given. Will that not impact productivity? How do we factor this into?
This is a very good question, Ramesh. Thank you for asking it. If you have projects which, let's say, have a timeline of 4 years, in the beginning, you have no idea. Let's say you have to build a satellite. What you then do is you create big chunks of work. We call it work packages. Yeah. And then we say the only thing, please make an estimation, 1,000, 2,000 hours, etc., for every work package. But the work package, which is right ahead of you, you have to make details. So the detail will come during the project. And during this, and then it comes back, the feedback will tell you what is, let's say, the performance of your estimations. And I know they are wrong. Don't worry. I want to know the gap between your estimation and reality. And therefore you learn. And then you know, do I need more hours? Do I need more capacity for the remaining time of the project? Now, this is quite often the same story, Ramesh. Focus on the first 3 months. That's always what I say. Try to detail that. Good question. Thank you.
I think we're done. If I haven't covered your question, can you, you've got a quick few minutes before I wrap up. I'm sharing my screen now. Hopefully it's the right screen. Is it coming? My PC doesn't like mornings.
It's funny, we have 23 people, Brian. That's normally more than I give a presentation at the conference in a small room.
I think some have left, and I can tell you that I think it was up to 36, 37 at the peak there as well. Can you see my slides clearly? Can you see the?
Yeah, it's my slide, what I see now.
Yeah, I wanted.
It's not the big slide, not the full.
Okay. Again, it always does that. I will suss out how to do that. Now it should be the big slide.
Oh, so yes, continue.
Why can't I get rid of those?
No, it's working, Brian. You can continue. I see questions, correct?
Questions, which we've done. I wanted to leave the contact details there as well, just in case, so that people can reach out to you if they have still questions and they haven't been answered. Let me see if I can get to the next page. I just wanted to. You see the sponsors now?
Yeah.
No black boxes on the screen?
Nope.
My screen is behaving strangely. Okay, again, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to the other chapters as well. Like I said, this is a multi-chapter assignment, so that's enabled us to bring people together from all over, well, not just the 3 chapters, but all over Europe as well. Here's the PDU. I posted it in the chat a few times. Anybody got any problems that you haven't got that, let me know. A reminder, there are some more sessions coming up. In Luxembourg, if you're a Luxembourg member, they're having a physical event Friday evening where they're going to debrief on all of the week's events. So you can, if you're a Luxembourg member, participate in that. We have some more virtual sessions today. Frank Turley is introducing this evening. It should be a fun session, project management failures. I'm sure Jan Willem could contribute to that as well with some of the examples, but some lessons learned there as well as a bit of fun. The sessions on Friday were originally planned to be physical in Teveren, just outside of Brussels, but that is no longer physical. So there are more sessions available on Friday, workshops as well for diversity and inclusion. And for the Belgian members of particular interest, Friday evening, there is a session to meet the invisible president. Jack Noynes has been our president for a couple of years, and unfortunately, you know, whilst we like networking and social interaction, he hasn't been able to physically meet everybody. So we at last decided to do it in an online session. So all of those are available on pmfair.org. Go and have a look and see if there's anything of interest on the Friday. Like I say, a lot more sessions there. The fun one tonight, and we've still got Thursday as well. Some more sessions there. So log those. Finally, Jan Willem, awesome. Thank you very much. I think I need you in my organization. I'm certainly going to share this this presentation with them. The recording will be available on pmfair.org. And I'm sure Jan Willem will be happy to meet contacts and reach out to him if you have any further questions.
Of course.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Enjoy the PM Fair.
Yeah.
Yep.
You.
Thank you.
See you all.